Hello, I'm Tom Edden, and you're listening to the Spotlight podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight podcast with me, Will Longman. This week my guest is Tom Edden, who's currently gearing up to star in Jamie Lloyd's brand new production of Cyrano de Bergerac at the Playhouse Theatre. It's Jamie Lloyd's first production in a year's worth of plays at the Playhouse Theatre, but it's far from the first time he's worked with Tom. Tom appeared in Pinter 3, the third production in the Pinter at the Pinter season, alongside none other than Lee Evans, as well as the Great West End production of Dr. Faustus alongside Kit Harington. You'll also know Tom from his Tony-nominated role in One Man, Two Guvnors, as well as Amadeus, Matilda and Oliver, all of which we touch on during the course of the podcast. But first, we chatted backstage, nestled in the company manager's office, about one of his biggest loves outside of theatre. I read an interview with you.
Yes.
Around Amadeus time.
Oh yes, that's right, yes.
Which detailed your step into loving classical music.
Oh yes, indeed.
You a big classical music fan?
Big classical music fan.
Yeah.
Big fan. And I try to go to concerts as much as I can. In fact, obviously once one is up and running in performance, it's very hard to get to concerts. But in rehearsals, which have just sort of, coming to the business end of, I've been going to quite a few concerts at the Festival Hall and Barbican. But yeah, since I was about 10 really, I really got into classical music, and it kind of stuck, and it's one of the things that if you do get into it, you can't run out. You know, it's if you have an insatiable appetite for it, it'll keep delivering great feasts of. You think you've heard it all, and then you haven't, and you'll discover something new. So that I enjoy, and I enjoy the evolution through the eras from Baroque to classical to Romantic into 20th century. I find that really fascinating how that all changes and who borrows and is developed by whom and so forth.
And that all started from the age of 10 or 11?
Yeah, about that time. I remember my mum, we had a record of, my mother was very into classical music and sings in choirs and stuff, and she had a record of Rossini opera overtures, and I heard the William Tell one, the famous one, that one that everyone knows. But I remember as a really young child, I must have been about 4 actually, I just sort of gripped me and went, oh my goodness, something that you can listen to that feels like a story, or feels like a picture, or feels like drama. And actually I think my response to drama and storytelling, to use that slightly tired phrase, probably first started with music actually, before I got turned onto it with theatre and so forth. Yeah.
Did you have a similar kind of moment when you were discovering classical music and art forms like that with theatre and drama?
Well, I guess my epiphany with sort of drama probably wasn't from seeing anything. It probably sort of came internally. I think I don't really remember seeing much theatre when I was very small, but I think maybe being like a sort of, I'm not a middle child, but I'm a twin, and there's one of 3. And I think there was a sense that I had to sort of I became a bit of a show-off as a child, I think, to sort of get noticed or get attention like we all do. And you notice rewards from it. Or, if you start to get good at getting attention, you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can make people laugh, or I can show off and stuff. And there was a local drama group that was just a bit of fun, really, on a Saturday. And yes, and then we did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I was Grumpy.
Okay.
Which was my stage debut. But, God, I must have been like tiny then, like 6 or 5 or 6. But it wasn't really until secondary school, I suppose, primary school I was a big show off. We did James and the Giant Peach, and we did Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And yeah, I was a big show off and got thumbs up for being good. So it's all sort of a craven attempt to sort of, to feed my ego, really. But I suppose a real interest in the actual form began in secondary school. I had a very, very good drama teacher who was called Jenny Haynes, who was incredibly supportive, enthusiastic, and responded to sort of sponge-like minds. In fact, I was in the same class as, in fact, my best friend at school was Joe Hill-Gibbons, who's now director, very successful and fascinating director. And we were best mates at school, and we were both sort of, whether consciously or subconsciously, sort of taken into our drama teacher's sort of great world of enthusiasm. And from early teens, I was kind of like, oh, I want to be an actor, and he was like, yeah, I think I want to be a director, and here we are. And really, lots of theatre trips. And I think when I first actually was turned on by going to the theatre and going, that's where I want to be. I want to be one of those people. Was our school did a lot of trips to the National Theatre. Okay. I remember I saw Fiona Shaw in Mackinac. I saw Julia Mackenzie and Sweeney Todd, and just brilliant Alan Howard, who was in a lot of stuff then, and really turned on by these sort of the real theatrical establishment, I suppose, at that point. And I was like, I want to do that for a job.
Have you worked with Joe since you?
Yes, we did Measure for Measure together at the Young Vic. Which was really nice. And it was strange. It was just sort of it was lovely and strange, but it was the fact that we'd known each other since we were, I don't know, about 12, and here we were in the profession as grown-ups, So it was quite nice. There was quite a we didn't have to say much to each other, actually. We sort of got it. I think he knew what he wanted, and he immediately went, oh, I know Tom could do that. Okay. And so he went, oh, you know what I want? And I was like, yeah. And that was it. And then there's, of course, the craziness of his productions, and I'm going, what are we doing? But I loved that show, and I think a lot of people really responded to it as well.
So I wanted to, speaking of directors, we're here backstage at the Playhouse, where you're doing Cyrano de Bergerac.
Correct.
With Jamie Lloyd. And you worked with Jamie last year.
Indeed.
Pinter 3.
Yes. And in Faustus.
Of course.
Yes.
What is it like working with Jamie? Because he attracts so many talented people into his production.
Yes, he does. I think, speaking for myself, I really, it's going to sound like I'm just sort of, being sycophantic, but I do genuinely really, really like working with Jamie. I don't quite know how he does it, but he's got a very, very quick way, almost immediately, of creating a sense of loyalty to the piece, a real sense of team, and an enthusiasm for whatever crazy idea he's got, and what unconventional idea he might have. And that, as an actor, is just such a nice environment to be in. He really values what the actor does. He really likes actors, and he likes what actors can bring when they're playing around. And on Faustus, any crazy idea. It became a thing that we would joke about a stupid, crazy idea that we could do. And he'd go, yeah, let's do it. And we started to edit ourselves going, don't say that. Don't say, oh, let's, wrestle in a shower of blood, because then he'll do it. And, that ended up happening and things like that. But, no, he's just really, it feels, actors are very delicate creatures. We just want to be loved. We're like sort of pets, I suppose. You just have to feed us and tell us we're marvellous. And he really acknowledges everyone, and everyone around as well. There's no sense of hierarchy or top dog, or there's none of that. And very easily, despite the best efforts, I think companies can, any group of people, you can get into politics and get into sort of who's the alpha male or alpha whatever, and it seems free of that. I don't know quite how he does it, but I think he's a very good leader. He's got a very strong vision that he's very confident and clear on, and you kind of relax. You kind of go, great, yeah, I'm in. You sign up. And in terms of him getting like big names and stuff, I think all these, no matter how big these people are, whether it's McAvoy or Kit Harington or Lee Evans or people like that, they all just want to do good work. These superstars, they all started out as people who want to do good stuff, and in an unpretentious way.
And it's not necessarily that they're big names. That's almost secondary to the fact that they're perfectly cast. It's never miscast.
No,
well suited.
indeed, yeah. So it's a very good point, and I think he, clearly he's had a long-standing relationship with James McAvoy, and they really click off each other. And James is a perfect example of someone who's a, huge movie star, but what's so wonderful about him is it takes 2 seconds to realise that this guy's priority is his craft and what he does on stage, and for all the great movies he's done, it seems he needs to come back to the stage just to sort of not check that he's still got it. But you know what I mean. Just keep it alive. It's where it's at.
Get his fix.
Yeah, it's really where it's at. What's that Derek Jacobi phrase? He said, I'll probably get it wrong, but it's like TV makes you famous, film makes you money, but theatre's where it's at.
Right.
And I think there's we can all comfort ourselves about that, but I think there is something in that, in terms of, like, if you're an actor, that's the juice. Do you know what I mean? And I think we all felt that in all those productions. Yeah.
You mentioned working with Lee Evans
Yes.
in The Pinter,
Yeah.
and doing some research. There's a fantastic production shot of Lee on one side and you
Oh,
sticking your tongue out in the other side.
Yeah.
What was it like working with him? Because it seems like your acting styles are quite similar. It's kind of this heightened. You can do this kind of heightened comedy.
Sure, yeah. I loved Lee. Lee is just. He's such an adorable person, and he's exactly what you think he's going to be, and you love him in the way that exactly you think you will. But you kind of feel quite protective of him. He's almost like a sort of child in a way. It's sort of innocent in a way, and he's a very sensitive and very beautiful person. Well, the nice thing about that picture that you mentioned, that was that we were due to do one sketch together in Pinter 3, because it was a sort of medley of shorter pieces, more so than the others in the season. I had a monologue and Mira Sayal had a monologue, and there was lots of little bits. And that sketch that we did, wasn't programmed, actually. What was so lovely about the Pinter season that Jamie did, it felt like a sort of festival. And at one point there was a gala for, I think, the 10-year anniversary of Pinter's death, and everybody was on stage. It was Sheila Hancock, Felicity Kendall, David Suchet, and it just went on and on and on. Hiddleston and Kit Harington. In fact, that's where Tom Hiddleston did a piece from Betrayal, and apparently said to Jamie, I think I should probably do this play. And they whipped out a contract in record time, I should imagine. But at that, there was a sketch that I did with Colshaw, John Colshaw, thank you. And it was that sketch, and it went down really well. It was really funny. And Jamie just went, you and Lee we should pop that into the show. And it turned out to be one of the highlights of my show, and anyway, and it opened Act 2, and it was a really, really funny bit. But yeah, I can't remember. We just downed a pint. That was it. The gag at the end is that we were downing a pint, and Lee made a whole thing out of it, obviously. And yeah, we were sort of doing the hacker face at each other, having finished it. But no, I think there was a lovely balance performing with Lee, because I'm used to, in certain shows, as you say, sort of doing a lot of physical comedy stuff. You can't. There's a real dance with Lee, because you're on stage with this person that everyone's going to be focused on, obviously, but equally there's this dance, and it's not about being the straight guy, but it's about serving the sketch at the end of the day. But it was a very interesting process for me to sort of go, how does this sketch work, actually, without it being imbalanced?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier working with Joe.
Yes.
And Joe knew exactly what he wanted from you, and you knew what to deliver from that kind of style.
Yeah.
And then talking about Jamie, he knew what he wanted from you and how to get that out of you.
I think so, yeah.
I've almost rather foolishly gone into talking about you and doing physical comedy, because roles like that in The Pinter and playing Wormwood in Matilda, there's only a certain type of actor that can do that and pull it off well. So I'm interested in how you would describe your own acting style.
I really don't know. I think I do respond physically. I think that's something. It was interesting, because when I did One Man, Two Guvnors, which I'll mention if you won't. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm being a ham. I'm being a terrible ham. No. What was interesting is that was the first time I got any sort of real attention, and so I did start doing these sorts of things in interviews and stuff, and people kept asking me, what was your style? What did you do? And I hadn't thought about it. I thought, I don't know really, but but I do respond physically. I know that, but I equally wouldn't want to be as soon as you start pigeonholing yourself, it feels like a restriction. It feels like a kind of... And the thing I've really cherished in my career, to use that word, is variety. And when things come up, I'm able to go, yes, I'm right for that, or I'm not right for that. But that's what I love about Jamie, is that Jamie goes, well, I think you could do pretty much anything, actually. Okay. I think there's certain areas of the industry go, oh, yes, Tom can do A, B, and C. What I love about Jamie is he goes, yeah, but I reckon he could do X, Y, and Z as well. Yeah. And that as an actor is real manna from heaven. So I don't know about a style. I mean, yeah, if you'd only ever seen me doing Thénardier and Les Mis and Fagin and Oliver and Mr. Wormwood and Matilda, which are all basically the same part, you'd go, oh, okay, he's funny. He can do funny and nasty at the same time, and he can hold a tune in a bucket. But so yeah, there's that. But I don't know really. I don't know about style. I respond physically, but equally there's part of me that gets very forensic, cerebrally, and goes, I have to know exactly what's happening here. Otherwise, what I don't like is catching myself on stage and having a voice in my head going, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Yeah. Or anything vague. I was very lucky to do a movie with Mike Leigh, and it was only 2 weeks filming for me, and I'm in a couple of scenes, but that was like a 9-week rehearsal process, and we did, and basically all of it was research and more research, and a real forensic laying of a foundation of who this person was, and that anything that happened, you would be able to respond in character. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was very luxurious, but in a way. And then the next thing I did after that, or one of the next things, was Fagin for Daniel Evans in Sheffield. And I thought, right, I am going to dot every... What do you dot? The I's. And cross every T. So that, on day one of rehearsal, I am so immersed in the reality of who this person's... what this person's life is, because that's only my job. That's the only thing I've got to do in Oliver. Everyone else has got to do everything else and cover this base and that base and everything. But when you're playing a part, it's your job, no one else's, and you're on your own, and no one else is doing it. So there's a sort of not to sound too pretentious, but there is a responsibility, because you go, well, it's down to me now, and to represent this person. So that's a long-winded answer, but I guess a bit of both, a bit of physical and a bit of mental, a bit of fire, a bit of ice.
There's an interesting documentary on Netflix. I think it's called Jim and Andy, and it's about Jim Carrey.
Oh God, yes, he's bonkers, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in the film Man on the Moon, and he really gets into that character, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
That's too far.
He does. Yes, I wonder if someone else, maybe slightly further down the trough, was using that method, whether they'd last that long. But no, that was full immersion. Yes. Yeah. I don't know whether that's sustainable on a day-to-day basis, quite, but no, I know what you mean.
It's interesting you recalling the very, very, very first roles you ever had when you were really young, playing Grumpy and in Joseph, because a lot of the time I'll talk to an actor and they recall their first moment in drama school, the first production.
Yeah.
So what would that little boy have said to the Tom that was sat Radio City Music Hall at the Tony Awards?
Yeah.
And been nominated? It was Radio City.
No, it was the one year they didn't do it there. They did it up at the... No, but it was an anomaly. It was... they did it there, and then they were like, oh, we're not going to do it there again. So, not the Kodak Theatre, because that's the Oscars, isn't it? I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember. It's terrible. What would the child say to the man?
Yeah.
Well, I think... it'd be flabbergasted, really, because I think I only really thought in my head, how do you actually be an actor? Like, how do you actually do that, like, properly, and decide that that's what you're doing? I think that probably only started about 16.
Okay.
And I think when I was 6, I thought I was going to be a cartoonist. I was pretty convinced about that. So I think the child would say to the man, oh, well done. Great. You've done all right, haven't you? You've maybe taken it a bit too far. Control yourself. It's interesting, actually, because usually the question is the other way around, isn't it? What would you say to the child? But I think...
let's go the other way around then as well.
No, I suppose the stock question is... Well, it's funny that, actually, I was asked that the other day as well. What would you say? But in a way, you kind of don't want to say anything. Because you don't want... It's like going back in time. You can't touch anything, otherwise you'll ruin it. And in a way, I think if you'd... it's funny, isn't it? Because I think the question of confidence comes up a lot. And in a way, what you immediately go is, if I could speak to my younger self, I'd say, look, don't worry. don't beat yourself up. You're doing great, and it's all going to be fine. And in a way, if you have that assurance, maybe you take your foot off the gas a little bit. Like maybe you need that. I don't know. Maybe you need that, not doubt, but you need that hunger. And if someone says to you, actually, you will never be hungry, it's all going to be good. Maybe that relaxation doesn't help. Maybe you need to go. Maybe there needs to be. I mean, we're going into slightly.
Stress makes you perform better, doesn't it? That's
maybe not stress, but maybe I don't know. Hunger, I think, is the thing, and you do need to sort of slightly elbow things out of the way. Not people, but like preconceptions and doubts, and I think if you don't have that when you're young. You know, because in my 20s, my career was really patchy, and it wasn't a given that I'd end up on the West End or doing marvellous things or sort of highlights that we can look back on. It wasn't, none of that was a given. It was all a bit of a scrap. And but the one thing that got me through is that when you're young, you kind of, you push through. Like, you kind of bounce back, and you have a bit of... I mean, I'm sure I was feeling just as sort of anxious and insecure about it all then, but you just put one foot in front of the other. And maybe if you speak to your younger self and tell you to sort of chill out a bit, maybe you don't put one foot in front of the other. You know? You can't assume it's all coming your way. That's, I guess, what I'm thinking.
Hi again. Tom was definitely one of the most switched on and funniest people I've had the pleasure of interviewing. So I really hope you're enjoying listening in on our chat. We get to the quickfire questions now, where I fire 10 questions at our guest to answer as quickly as they can. Tom was a little bit determined to beat Giles Torreira, who was our first guest of the year, and I highly recommend you go through the back catalogue and listen to our podcast. But let's find out how he got on with that motivation. The best performance you've ever seen?
Jessica Lange in Long Day's Journey Tonight.
Your favourite theatre in London?
Drury Lane.
The last film you watched?
Oh, God. The last film I watched? Irishman.
Your interval drink?
Oh, water.
Your biggest passion outside of theatre?
Bird watching and classical music, joint first.
The role you've always wanted to play?
Oh, God. Fagin, I've played it.
The best role you've ever played?
Alfie and Fagin.
London or New York?
Oh, man, both.
Your favourite composer?
Sibelius.
And one thing that you have to have in your dressing room?
My iPod.
36 seconds.
Yes, Giles, eat that.
That's pretty good.
Oh, God. I'm glad I was worried you were going to suddenly put it. What's your relationship like with your father?
Next time, maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
Right, well, where do we start with that?
That was revealing, wasn't it?
I hope so. Best performance you've ever seen, Jessica Lange?
Yes, Long Day's Journey Tonight. I mean, there is a long list. I would add Jane Krakowski in Guys and Dolls. I would add, you could go on and on. I saw Paul Schofield's last performance ever. I saw Vanessa Redgrave in Cherry Orchard. I've seen some incredible things on stage. Bette Midler in Hello Dolly. But Jessica Lange in Long Day's Journey Tonight with Charles Dance, Paul Rudd and Paul Nichols about 12, 15 years ago. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I've seen Maggie Smith on stage, Judi Dench. I mean, obviously they're peerless and untouchable, but Jessica Lange had this energy where... And it's the kind of thing like Judy Garland has and some of these great actresses have. You think they're going to fall into pieces or explode like a volcano. There's this potential for total power and total vulnerability at the same time. And it's this knife edge. I was just on the edge of my seat the whole night. She is untouchable for me, Jessica Lange. And it was before all the American Horror Story and everyone was like, oh, Jessica Lange. I was Jessica Lange's cheerleader from that night on. She blew my mind.
A couple of your answers related to Oliver Fagin.
Oh, yes.
As your favourite role that you've ever done and the role you've always wanted to play. So was that one before it was offered to you wanted to play it? Yes.
Well, I was in the... there was a really big turning point for me was when I turned 30. My first job in London, in non-fringe in London, and first West End job was the big revival of Oliver Mackintosh did in 2009 and 10. It was directed by Rupert Gould, who I'd worked with at Northampton in my 20s, and that was my way in. And they originally saw me for Sowerbury, and I didn't get it. Julian Bleach got it. Julian Bleach is just magnificent. But I was second cover understudy Fagin, and in the ensemble, and I never went on, but I'd always wanted to play that part. And it's interesting I said that because if you'd asked me when I was 20, I'd have probably said Hamlet or... Mm-hmm. And if I thought more, I'd probably say Richard II or something like that. But I think there's something about Fagin that is a beautiful mix, maybe the mix we were talking about, of comedy and sort of almost a front-footed vaudevillian, and it's this incredible peach of a character. So having understudied it and never played it, and I was in that for 2 years, it was sort of within touching distance, but it was Rowan Atkinson and then Griff Rhys-Jones and people like that. And then after after Guvnors, I went to a birthday. This is a slightly rambling story, but I'll keep it quick. I went to a birthday party, and Daniel Evans was there, and I'd seen his My Fair Lady at the Crucible the year before, which I thought was amazing. And I was gushing away, and he was gushing about Guvnors, and he loved it. And I said, "What are you doing next?" And he said, "Oh, we're doing Oliver." And as a joke, I said, "Oh, I could play Fagin," as a joke, because it was happening in like a month's time. So I thought, well, I've cast somebody. And he looked at me like, "Are you serious?" And I sort of thought, well, I wasn't, but I am now. And then the conversation ended. And then sure enough, on the Monday, my agent called and said, and I said, "Oh, they want to see me for Fagin, don't they? In Sheffield, yeah." They'd cast someone who shall remain nameless, and they just dropped out that day.
Wow. So
serendipity afforded that I was in front of Daniel and was feeling ballsy enough to say, I could play Fagin. And so it happened, and it was a real gift. That part was very challenging, very hard physically and vocally. It wasn't a breeze, but I absolutely loved playing that part, and I'd like to play it again. So that felt like, I don't know if I'll ever play Richard II or things like this, but I'd love to. But whether anyone sees that, but that was a part I thought, this is a great part. And then Thénardier came out of that, and Wormwood, and into those sort of character lead roles in the West End musicals. That sort of came out of that. Yeah.
I love those stories where everything just falls into place.
Oh my God, it was a complete fluke. And this is the thing, even though one has one's insecurities and sort of lack of confidence or whatever, in that moment I felt emboldened enough to crack a joke, because in my head I'm going, people always say you have to kind of manifest things slightly, but that was a little moment where I did. Even if it was kind of a bit of a cheeky joke, I said, I could do it, But you only do that when you really know that's true. Like, I knew I could play that part, that, and it's not a sort of arrogance or stuff. You just go, no, that's me. That is me all over, and gimme,
You gave a joint answer for best role you've ever played.
Yeah. Well, it had to. Guvnors changed everything. Yeah. And Alfie and Guvnors was just. I'll never have another job like that, and I mean, maybe, who knows? I hope so, but I hope every actor gets to have that sort of experience. Look, I was coming out of ensemble second cover Fagin. I'd played a sort of jokey, sort of older man part in Papa in parts of Oliver. I'd got a new agent. Alistair Coomer was sort of in my awareness socially and professionally, and they were looking for someone young who could play really old. And my agent was smart enough to go, well, you've kind of just been doing that, a 30-year-old understudying Fagin and playing these older men. Got to be funny, da-da-da-da. And the audition went well. And I was teaching, actually, at Erdang, and I was doing some clowning workshops. So I was kind of in that mode in my head. And I thought, no, I know what to do. And who knew? I mean, who knew? All the stars aligned. Corden, Richard Bean, Heitmer, Cal McChrystal, The National, and it just... I mean, the rest is history. But for a job like that, to be the first time I worked at the National Theatre, to be my second West End job, to be the first time I even went to New York, never mind performed on Broadway, and then all the things that happened, the Drama Desk Award, the Tony nomination, and just the whole kit and caboodle was like a dream. It was like a mad dream. And then the funny thing was, coming back, I had these crazy auditions and jobs with like Mike Leigh and Kenneth Branagh and doing Cinderella, and they were all saying, oh, you must notice a real upturn in your career. And I'm going, yeah, you're talking to me. You didn't know who I was before this, did you? Mike Leigh was like, oh, so have you noticed anyone, this has helped your career? And I'm like, well, this isn't bad, this wasn't happening. This wasn't on the cards 2 years ago. Yeah.
Was that the main thing that made you clock how big of a deal it was? Because sometimes I talk to people and they're in, these phenomena, and it's kind of its own bubble, and they don't see it from the outside. But were you aware how big it was?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I mean, this was the beautiful thing. There were so many steps. There was the fact that it was this huge sensation at the National, and then how well it sold at the West End. It broke records, and at that time we heard it was going to Broadway. And then once we got to New York, it was all these wonderful layers of next level kind of... I would say there was two moments, if I can indulge myself. there's a slightly different culture, I think, in New York. In London, it was the show that was the sensation, and I was singled out, I have to say, by reviews and so forth, and it did really. I did feel very, very blessed by that. But there's something in New York where I think the establishment goes, who's that guy? Look at what he's doing. They really, there's such a connoisseurship, and there's such an almost sort of junkie level obsession with every aspect of what is going on in theatre, in Broadway and off Broadway, that if someone new comes along and they're going, who's that? What's he doing? And the award season is its own thing, and that's based on sort of, you can't believe any of it, because if you do, you bang your head on something, but it's real fun to sort of enjoy on a level like that. But the other moment, I have to say, was actually our first preview at the National, when we didn't quite know what we'd got. And the first time I fell down the stairs, because it's just the recurring gag of falling down these stairs in a very sort of unexpected way. And I land on this mattress under the stage, and there was me and Ollie Chris and David Benson, and this enormous laugh sort of travelled like the blood out of the elevator doors in The Shining, came down the hole into the substage area, like this tangible avalanche of sound. And we all looked at each other and was like, wow, this is supersonic. Wow. And people going, these laughs haven't happened on in the London theatre since sort of Noises Off. That's what the people kept saying. And it became this new benchmark. I'm not taking responsibility for that personally. I'm just saying that was part of the phenomenon. These, people thought they had a comedy on their hands somewhere else, and we were like, no, you don't get it. This is rolling laughter. This is people wetting themselves. This is people falling off. There was a guy, the plant in the audience, he was always such a nice guy, because he would tell us how the audience were responding, and he was saying, there was this one woman sat behind me who loved everything you were doing. She was laughing at everything you did. And then oddly, when you fell down the stairs, which was like the biggest laugh, she went quiet. Everyone else was falling about. And he said, that's strange, that woman who's been laughing at everything isn't laughing. And so we turned around to check, and she was on the floor. She'd actually fallen off her chair because she'd found it so... And that's Cal McChrystal, that's Richard Bean, that's myself, that's James Corden, that's the whole team. I'm not claiming that as a personal laurel, but it's...
what a thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it was magic. It was really magic. And lifelong friendships and a lifelong love now of New York. I've tried to go back every year since then and see my really good friend David and see the theatre and stuff, and it's just great.
I told you we'd get around to it. I didn't forget it.
No, please. My egotistical territory, marking my egotistical territory.
Thank you very much for chatting with Tom, and all the best in Cyrano.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you to Tom for being such a wonderful guest. Make sure you get down to the Playhouse Theatre to see him in Cyrano de Bergerac. You can get your tickets at londontheatre.co.uk. Be sure to leave us a comment or a rating wherever you get our podcasts, be that Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. But until next time, thank you very much for listening.